So on that note, it's time to kick off today's program. And note that the agenda and the bios for all the presenters were emailed to all of you earlier today, and any presentations from today will be posted to our site, and the videos will be available in a few days. So I'd like to welcome Janet Balis and her esteemed panel of video buyers and sellers. Janet is EY's America's Customer and Growth Market Leader and CMO Practice Leader. So welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate the introduction. And I'm incredibly excited to host this panel discussion on the buyer and seller update on collaborating to design cross-platform television and premium video measurement. So I'll invite my panelists, Grace Dolan, who is the Vice President of Marketing for Samsung's Home Entertainment Division, to join me. I'll invite Adam Gerber, Global Chief Investment Officer of Essence Global, which is obviously a division of Group M, to join me, and Denise Colella, Senior Vice President of Advanced Advertising Products and Strategy for NBCUniversal. And these are three very familiar faces to me, not only from the CIMM initiative, but also from our Future of Television conversations, because it was really this continuum of dialogue and a philosophy, I think, that we've all shared over the course of these industry conversations, which has been a spirit of collaboration, of cross-ecosystem creation that we felt was so important, that we needed to place marketers' perspectives at the core of the dialogue, but we really needed to appreciate the voices of agencies, of the networks, of the technology providers, the data providers, the MVPDs, that we really needed to embrace all of the different perspectives to co-create the future of, I'm not sure the word television even really applies. I'm not sure whether that's the right word anymore. I'm not sure whether that applies to programming and premium programming, or whether that applies to the advertising or anything in between. But I think we know what we're talking about: linear and digital interoperability on some level. So let's take that wonderful overview that Jane just shared and go back to that, because actually that work was a bit of time ago, and our last Future of Television workshop, when we were all physically together, was actually January, before the pandemic started. So we haven't seen each other face to face for a while. I'd love to hear, just so much has changed in the world, certainly at large, and certainly on this topic. When we last left off, we were working on the architecture that we just looked at, and we're focused on these issues of ID resolution and data interoperability. If we go from that moment over the summer to this moment now, what has changed? What's the same? And what is different about how you would describe the need? Maybe Denise, I'll turn to you to share a bit of your perspective.
Hi, Janet, and I certainly miss seeing your face, since it's been about a year now since we last met in person. So much has changed. When you think about the industry, some of it is organic change. It was going to happen regardless of pandemic or not. There's a move towards streaming and CTV. There were privacy moves in play, so that was going to take place. There were shifts in budgets. So we saw all of these changes taking place. But I think the pandemic did so much to accelerate those changes. And in a way, I think that's partially why we're here today. We would have been there anyway. But we're here now talking about the acceleration in all of these changes. We're talking about the need for constant technology and standards across the industry. We're talking about how do we enable our clients to get the most accurate measurement and data possible. So when I go to Adam and I'm looking at his wheel, I can certainly say to him with 100% confidence, I can get to him the information that he needs to do his planning, to do his measurement, and make changes as necessary. And unless the industry centralizes on some technologies and capabilities, it's going to make it really hard to do so.
So I'm curious, for a lot of companies, the pandemic accelerated digital transformation, and let's say inside a company, maybe caused leadership and silos to work together a little bit better than before the pandemic, right? Crisis caused a lot of friction to go away inside of organizations. Denise, would you say that it is accelerating the cross-company collaboration? Is that getting to be less of a frictional issue? Are people coming together in new ways because the crisis is necessitating us to work together faster and better than before?
Sure. Well, that is a great question. And I remember last year, probably one of the great trips was to CES, right? And we announced our one platform where we were breaking down silos across the company, whether it be on the sales side, the product side, the engineering side, and making sure that we can provide a comprehensive way to plan inventory, forecast, serve inventory, measure, and then come back around with attribution, right? So we were already in the mode where we were going to unify those groups and break down the walls. But this pandemic has actually forced it to happen faster. I think we've been able to democratize information more because regardless of somebody's place in the world, so to speak, it's so easy to get on a Zoom call or a Teams call and exchange information. We can have more people in different meetings. It's much easier to get in touch with people because we've all become so much more acclimated to using chat and Teams. And I think that is really going to come to conclusion as we go into this upfront and we're able to produce a more holistic solution for our clients.
All right, so I've got the kumbaya message. I'm going to check in with the buy side here and just see if it's really working, which is good, by the way. But Adam, how much of that cross industry collaboration is really coming through from your side in terms of making it easy to see the full waterfront of options?
I mean, look, first off, I agree with everything that Denise laid out. I think the pandemic and kind of a lot of what we've all had to deal with as an industry over the past 8 to 12 months has accelerated a lot of the requirements that we had. I would argue that we were already behind the 8 ball before the pandemic started. So I think we're actually in a more challenging position now because of how quickly consumer behavior has changed and client businesses have migrated to digital environments. So I would just kind of maintain that we have a fire under us right now that we have to address. With regards to, to what degree have things, changed and are people working more collaboratively? I'd say they are. We're seeing, good progress with initiatives like OpenAP that most of the networks have either publicly adopted or are increasingly receptive to. I think that, we're seeing a number of initiatives to integrate different platforms and data solutions in the industry to support, campaign level or marketer centric initiatives, not just siloed publisher or platform capabilities. So I think that that's critical. But the thought I would throw out just in general to try to help maybe instigate even faster adoption of that is I'd argue that we really need a wholesale change around how different players in the marketplace view themselves. I would posit that the individual sellers that we've historically worked with need to stop thinking of themselves as competitors of one another, trying to sell against each other, and recognize that in this new world, they have to complement each other. Our goal should be to reduce the amount of ad pollution that exists in the ecosystem, use identity to deliver a more efficient way of delivering advertising. That should benefit everyone, and we should be working collaboratively to achieve that vision.
So Adam's arguing for not only his wheel, but climate change through
yes,
better change. Collaboration across the sellers. So I'm curious, Grace, as you look at this from Samsung's perspective, when you think about what this could potentially unlock, are you seeing a change in terms of what you are able to do in the face of what you would like to be able to do? How much of it is a reality from your perspective, and how much of that gap exists, and how profound of a challenge is it still for you to look across the waterfront and address some of the real challenges that we had discussed when we were shaping things, like be able to look at, reach and frequency end to end across all the options of where you might find your audience, and not think about it seller by seller or silo by silo, or even, sort of different silos across groups and fiefdoms. But, how do you think about it?
Yeah, so data is everything, right? It unlocks the world. It's like the red pill in the matrix, though, because it comes with so much accountability. I think so. There's a couple of things. I completely agree with everything that Denise and Adam have said. I think there's a much lower tolerance for ad pollution from a consumer standpoint, right? And so for me, I'm brand building, right? I don't want to be that annoying commercial. I don't want to be that annoying and completely irrelevant spot that just shows up out of place. So having insight and data to the right audience is so critical. And these solutions will unlock that for me. I think in what we realized last year with all the brands and the challenges that we had with budgets, right, in the face of COVID, we had greater accountability on how effectively those dollars were being used to reach the audiences that matter to our businesses. I think the validity and the reliability of that data became much more in the spotlight for our businesses, because we needed to be able to say, yes, with confidence, this is the right data, this is the right audience, I'm delivering the message in an effective way, and then here are the outcomes, and I can have a lot of confidence in the way that I've invested. That's it, right? That from a marketer standpoint, I go where my audience is, and I want to know that I'm going the right way.
So if we frame that as the ask, right? Reach the audiences that matter to you, believe in the data, make sure your dollars are being spent well, and deliver your outcomes, right? And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but pretty straightforward asks, all reasonable. I'd love to go back to sort of how we had originally framed the issue around data interoperability and ID resolution, and say, like, what is the thing? Did we frame it right? Did we frame it wrong? Where are we on that journey? Adam, you shared a couple of solutions that are sort of ascending in usage, and Denise, you also alluded to that. I'd love to hear from both your perspectives. What's missing? What's the gap that we really need to close here to realize what Grace is talking about in terms of her reasonable ambition, but obviously a lot of ways to go as an industry. Adam, maybe we'll start with you, and then Denise, I'd love to come back to you.
Sure. So look, I think we're making progress, but we're not there yet, right? The critical thing from a buyer's perspective, and I think this aligns with what Grace was talking about, is we plan campaigns. We plan against overarching business objectives that our clients have. We don't plan against individual platforms or publishers who are selling to us or activating on our behalf. So ultimately, we need a common and consistent way of evaluating the entire marketplace across all the phases that Jane actually referenced in her opening. There's a planning phase that we have to execute against in terms of thinking about strategically where are we allocating. There's an activation phase that we have to actually perform optimization and real-time decisioning in. And then we have to measure and validate success. And we have to do all three of those components of our jobs holistically. And so I think where we haven't achieved the desired end state yet is having data sets, identity, and interoperability between different platforms and tools that allow us to connect all parts of the ecosystem in each of those three phases of the work that we have to do. Have we made progress? Yes, we're slowly getting there. But I mean, the announcement that Nielsen made around Nielsen One is a great example of where there's a complete disconnect. There still continues to be a big disconnect with how we measure traditional linear TV and, more data informed, digital models of video. And I think that problem is exacerbated across a number of different channels and platforms. And those are the things we need to solve.
So Denise, as I turn to you, part of what Adam's saying has to do with interoperability that comes from technology tools, things that create actual connectivity. Some of it comes a little bit in his prior comments from a little bit of a mindset shift, right, on the seller community, right? If it, you know, is also what I hear, right? This notion of not competitors, sort of collaborators or complementary solutions in an ecosystem that runs end to end. When you think about this from the network's perspective, how do you navigate that?
Carefully, right? And I think anybody out there who's on the network side would agree. But Adam, to speak to a couple of points that you made during your comments, I couldn't agree more that the publishers, the networks need to start thinking of each other less as competition and more as cooperation, right? We're in a situation now where the data is becoming more evident. We've had Nielsen make their announcement, but that's a couple years off. We have OpenAP making a great effort towards helping unify the planning and audience determination and forecasting. And we have a lot of examples on the digital side, whether you look at LiveRamp or the Trade Desk. So I think that there's a lot of initiatives going on. And I think that the publishers, the networks are looking to each other to say, hey, how do we do this? How do we unify for Adam, right? Or for our other agencies and clients. But at the same time, you know, that silver bullet that is, it's elusive, right? It's not hitting us. And I think that CIMM and other initiatives are making way towards having some kind of framework that will allow us to pool our data, understand more about the consumers, because ultimately this is for the consumers, right? When we look at how the consumers interact with our digital brethren, they expect that kind of knowledge of who they are and that tailored experience. We on the linear side and on the streaming TV side, it's upon us to deliver that same kind of tailored experience. And we need to look at all these different initiatives, understand how we bring them together, or do we bring them together? Or is there something that we have to look at that doesn't exist yet that's going to make us more knowledgeable about the people we are trying to entertain and the advertisers that are trying to reach their consumers through us? It's not there yet, Janet. It's a tough market. We're trying, but you know, we're balancing. We're changing the wheels on the bus while it's running, right? Absolutely. And we have an upfront coming up, and yet along the side, while we're all doing our day jobs, we're trying to come up with this unified system, whether it's with CIMM or whether it's with work on OpenAP or WFA, right? It's time consuming, but we have to prioritize it.
So part of this is getting it all on a level playing field so you can sort of see it all comparably, and obviously a lot of differing interests in this. Grace, I'd love to turn to you though and sort of talk a little bit about not all the audiences are equal, because there are audiences also that you have a relationship with directly because you know your own audiences and your own consumers. Sort of when you think about the relationship there, and when you think about sort of first party data, third party data, navigating that relative to what we're talking about here, any comments? Like part of the problem we're solving here also has been going on for a while. It's going on so long that there's other stuff going on too, right? Which is I think maybe even complicates it. I'm curious, as you think about the changing landscape for what marketers really desire to be able to bring their own data and relationships with customers or consumers into the equation, is there anything else that the industry needs to consider as they're building the mechanics that strategically has value for you? Not just mechanically. So you think about maybe bringing your own data into the equation to find your consumers and make media work even harder for you.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously Samsung has a great deal of first party data, within our own devices, primarily being used to drive, innovation and improvements in the experience based on what they're doing on the devices, on TV specifically, right? TV and mobile. I think the ideal scenario for me, as you know, I work with media leaders, is to create experiences that feel really seamless for my consumer. And the ideal scenario is the marriage of, you know, highly reliable third-party data, second-party data, and then my own, and connecting that no matter, you know, where this consumer is traveling through the universe of content, from home and outward. I think it all comes down to just feeling like it is, well, one, that we're being respectful, of course, of this consumer's privacy, right? No matter what, like it's interesting as you talk to consumers, and we talk to consumers all the time. They're like, yeah, it's fine, it's fine. It's fine. Like, privacy is really important, but I'd rather have personalization. And then there's a whole nother subset that says, don't talk to me. Like, I don't want you to know that I exist. And I feel I'm concerned that you are even having this conversation with me right now. So it's striking that balance, creating this absolutely seamless journey while also being super, super mindful of how much data we're accessing and how we're merging that data together. It's really, really sensitive. I think everybody here understands that. So it's not a mechanical thing, but it's
Right.
it's a consideration that we all have to take very, very seriously as we're creating these solutions. Everybody wants an end-to-end solution. Everybody wants to know the consumer um, in every element of his or her passion and interest, and um, wants to do right by them.
Yeah, so
There's
I
a
think
lot
it's
of
so I
factors
think
there.
what's so interesting about it is it really goes back to something Adam said before, which is, you know, the consumers have been ahead of us and we're all playing catch up, right?
Yeah.
We've been playing catch up, trying to catch up with their screen fragmentation. I think we're going to be catching up with their data expectations and sort of and their sensitivities. You talked about the experience before and the sensitivity to, you know, we talked about pollution of ads, right, and experience. So we're going to be dealing with that, all of those realities at the same time as this. So we're coming up on time. So I want to just close with one question to each of you, which is, we're trying to be really pragmatic here. So I'm going to turn to each of you and ask for what's the one next step? What's the next thing? What's the next, you know, step on the ladder that we need to take towards this this end state that we want? Because we can sort of wax poetic about it, and it's easy to get lost in the theory, but we've got to put one foot forward in front of the other. What's one thing, one practical step that you think either you can do in your role at your company, or that the industry needs to take, or that CIMM needs to take, or the audience needs to consider? What's one next thing that can happen that's real, if you've got one? Denise, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll jump in here. I think that the industry really has to help us out and define a standard for sharing data. The consumer is ahead of us, as you said. The agencies are demanding the ability to provide more tailoring, more addressable advertising, and we want to do it, right? So when I go out to the agencies or the advertisers, I end up having a different conversation with every agency, every advertiser, sometimes different conversations within agencies about how are we going to share our data. And if we can't get that to scale and agree on a standard, it's going to hurt our ability to increase the amount of audience targeting we can do. And ultimately, that'll make a better experience for everyone.
All right, we've got 1 minute left. Adam, you've got an idea?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are plenty of different areas of the industry where we could generate ideas, but I'll throw one out, which is in the inventory side of the industry. And I think, you know, one critical thing we can do is start standardizing how addressable advertising is going to evolve in the live linear space. We're starting to see a lot of trials and tests. It's not going to, you know, all linear is not going to be addressable. That is not a reality. It's not going to happen. But there will be an increasing amount of national avails that take on a data-informed and addressable profile. Having a consistent way that all of the sellers bring that to market, I think, will help us scale it faster, especially if we have the solution around identity and data underpinning it.
Great. Grace, anything to close?
I think it's just about keeping folks accountable, right? Like where dollars are very powerful. So where my media dollars will go, demanding that there be, standardization and a unified point of view on the data that I'm getting to support the campaigns that I'm supporting with media. And I think that's important, right? That's the power
Absolutely.
of the brands.
I love that. And I love closing on that note. And so, as I always say, when we have this conversation, the only voice that matters, even though I love all the voices equally, is the voice of the marketer. So we'll close on that, which is that we've got to be accountable to that. So thank you so much, Grace, Adam, Denise, appreciate the conversation. And I'll turn things back over to our next speaker.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Well, thanks very much, Janet, Grace, Denise, and Adam, for getting us started with a clear appreciation of the business issues in getting to TV data interoperability and ID resolution.